So super excited today to have Shannon Thompson joining us. I've known Shannon kind of from a distance, to be honest, but for a long time now. And so, I mean, I don't know when we first connected, but it's got to be 5+ years ago at least. And
Mm-hmm.
Shannon's worked with our company for quite a while, just sort of helping athletes and consulting with them on the mental sport performance side of things. Um, she's amazing. I mean, her energy and enthusiasm and personality is like really infectious. She's just like a wonderful person to talk to, even if she's not giving a lecture. Yeah, it's hard when you hear praise about yourself, but that's all right.
Like, oh.
And she actually lives and works in Flagstaff, Arizona. She works with tons of high performance athletes at the University of Arizona, mostly, right?
Or Northern Arizona University. I
Northern.
know.
Sorry,
No,
Northern
you're good.
Arizona.
There just is a University of Arizona, which is why I have to specify.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying. And large, like mostly runners, correct?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
And but also she has her own amazing sport background. She was actually a top level equestrian rider for many years, and then you did ultra running for a little bit as well. But I think the biggest thing she's sort of dove into is high performance sport and the mental side of it. And she has a master's degree in positive sports psychology from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you're really close. Yeah, positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. That's right.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, you're like well read, Jasper.
Hey, I'm even pulling this from the top of my head. I didn't even write it down. That's, anyway, I'm glad I got it right. So I'm going to stop talking and let Shannon jump in here. I think she has some stuff to present or say, but also, I mean, it's such a small group. So, we'll probably, if you have any questions at all, maybe just jump in and that can kind of steer the conversation. If you can either give a wave or you can use the raise your hand function, or you can just throw a chat in the chat thing, and I'll see it here. I'll kind of moderate and I can jump in. But anyway, take it away, Shannon. Thanks for joining us, and I'm looking forward to hearing you chat.
Oh, well, thanks, Jasper. I think the funny thing is basically every nice thing Jasper says about me, I can probably say about him. Like as far as like energy and conversation, we're like dangerous in the same space talking about mental performance oriented stuff. And I've been very, very grateful to be involved with B78 for a while now, like basically about 5 years. So yeah, what Jasper says is right. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. My primary clientele is distance runners, but I was saying to our young figure skater here, I actually did work with some figure skaters some time ago and have some experience in many different sports. But distance running is definitely my passion, and I've worked with a handful of triathletes through B78 too. So there's lots of crossover between distance running on its own and Ironman and triathlon. So yeah, I enjoy all of the sports and the people who I work with. So what I have to bring for you today is a bit of content. But I really invite this to be a discussion throughout. So if anybody has a thought they want to share or a question at any point, feel free to speak up. I don't anticipate my content, if I was to just talk constantly, to like take too long. But yeah, I just want to invite you to make this a discussion if you would like, and if any questions come to your mind. And that's great. Jasper's going to moderate because I'm on my phone. My computer needs a repair, and so I don't see everyone. So unless I swipe the screen, so Jasper I think is better equipped for moderating. So Jasper, you just feel free to stop me if someone has a hand up or something like that.
For sure, I'll give you a wave, and we have 300 people on, so don't be nervous.
We have 300 people on. That's fantastic.
No.
That's fantastic.
I'm just kidding. Okay.
No, I love it when it turns into a conversation, and I actually, yeah, don't think I like, I'm not going to be hard pressed to fill the time, like to deliver what I have to say in the time we have. So please feel free to take us down some tangents if there's something that's interesting to you. So what I wanted to talk about today was basically the potential benefits that we can draw from I don't want to necessarily say from COVID itself, but I think from the time that we are sidelined and unable to race or compete, I think there's some real benefits that can be drawn. And so I want to just talk about like basically what's being asked of me in my role in sports psychology from the athletes that I'm working with, and then also what I'm suggesting to the athletes that I'm working with. So basically, I want to take you on the path that I've been on so far, what I've been doing to try to help people benefit from this time, and what other people have been asking from me that is helping me help them. So I see right now that there's three ways that I'm trying to help people grow during this time. One is in growing the ability to listen to their own instincts and their own body, which I think is a major characteristic of successful athletes, is the ability to truly like tap into how they're really feeling, both physically and emotionally, and respect and listen to that and adjust training accordingly. The second area we'll touch on is basically, I see this as a time where we can educate ourselves in subjects that maybe we didn't feel like we had time to educate ourselves in previously, and even experiment with strategies that maybe we didn't feel like either we had time for, or maybe felt like it was risky to experiment with upcoming competitions. And then the third area that I'm seeing that this time can be quite useful is just really getting used to the idea of discomfort and uncertainty, and kind of learning to be more comfortable with discomfort and uncertainty. Because of course, discomfort and uncertainty is a part of our life all the time. Just right now, it's just incredibly apparent. It's incredibly visible. So those are the three areas that I plan to touch on. One thing that I think is really true, and I think it really helps us all to just accept, is we've never done this before. Like, there's no best practice for training in a pandemic before. So we're essentially writing the book. So definitely a stance I've been taking with the athletes I've been working with and the coaches I've been working with is just like, hey, we don't know what to do. We're going to make our best guesses to help our athletes perform well when life changes again and they can once again chase their goals the way that they used to be able to chase them. And yeah, always, I'm going to ramble on a little bit, but I'm happy to be stopped, as I said, so feel free to stop me at any point. So one thing that I've noticed, most of the athletes that I work with right now do work with a coach. And I've noticed that really a coach that is able to talk with the athlete and create some goals and a training plan during this time is just so helpful. And I'm guessing most of the people who are on this call perhaps are part of B78. So many of you potentially have a coach, and maybe some of you will reflect on that. Just having a coach making some decisions and creating some structure I've noticed that just be super helpful for the athletes that I work with. Like, especially the athletes at Northern Arizona University are just like following their coach's plan, and they seem to be a really calm bunch right now, and I just think it's because they trust their coach and they trust his strategy, so they're committing to that. So yeah, that may be something you already have in place, which would be awesome. The other thing that I'm noticing is that the two really like successful coaches that I'm working with, they are creating plans, but they're also being incredibly flexible for the athletes that they're working with. So I know within both NAU and also NAZ Elite, which is a pro running team that I work with, there's athletes within that team on completely different programs right now. So I know athletes who have only done easy running or easy high volume or not even high volume training since the beginning of all this, because that has felt right for them. And I know athletes who have been chasing Strava segments and time trials since the beginning of lockdown. And those coaches have been very flexible and have catered to both the wishes of both types of athlete. Definitely one question that's been coming to me a lot is like, what is the best practice here, especially within those teams when one athlete sees their teammate doing something completely different. Like for example, within NAZ Elite, I have one athlete who, for the first time ever, wanted to develop a mental performance plan for her races and do race simulation and test them out. And then her other teammate doesn't even want to do workouts, and they're both kind of going, "What's the best practice?" You know, my one teammate is gotten all intense, and my other teammate has gotten all subdued. What's the right thing? And my answer has always been like, man, if there's any time to listen to your wishes and listen to your instincts, I think it's now. We don't know like best practices for a pandemic for when we're going to race again next. So I've been encouraging people to truly listen to their instincts. And there's a few reasons for that. Like, I think that the pandemic itself, the changes in our lives, more stringent lockdown, which I think is getting lifted everywhere to some degree right now. The stresses of that, I think, impact everybody differently. So I noticed personally, and I had a few people say this to me early on, that they just felt really tired. Like maybe they weren't going to work. They didn't have a race upcoming, but they just felt really tired in their training. And so they needed to take some downtime. And I just think that's because the stress of the whole world changing probably affected those people differently than the teammate or the friend who's now upping the intensity because they feel inspired to do so. So listening to yourself and using this as a time to listen to yourself and trust that, I think is something we can learn during this pandemic. And I think also something that we can trust. One question I've been putting to athletes a lot during this time is, although we don't know when you're going to race next, what do you think you need to do today in order to be excited to race sometime down the line? And the way that that's phrased is quite specific. Like, that's a different question than what do you need to do today to be as performing at your best physically or be at your fastest when you race again. I think there's a different answer when you ask what do you need to be excited versus what do you need to be to perform your best. And personally, I think to be excited is where we want people to be when racing starts again. So asking oneself that on a daily basis is an approach I'm taking right now. And when the pandemic's over, we'll find out if that worked, But so far, it seems to be helping people to stay happy and committed in their training. So far, I feel like it's a reasonable approach.
I really, I love that approach because, I mean, from the coaching side of it, certainly if I was still competing as an athlete, I would find this time quite challenging. I don't know which side of the coin I'd fall on because on the one hand, you've got the potential that you might race in a couple months. And on the other hand, you may not. So for a lot of the people we work with, it's amazing to see how much of a motivator those races actually were. And that might sound obvious. Well, of course, that's why I train so hard, is to race. And but then on the flip side, like some people are just, so they either have to find like another challenge to do that has nothing to do with racing. So we have people doing these Everesting challenges, which are these crazy they take hours, you try and get Everest vertical, like they need a carrot to chase. And some people, just like you said, are actually not like that. They've kind of gone the other way. And what I love about what you just said is that rather than being like, how do I perform my best when this is all over? It's more like, no, how do I keep excited for this thing that I love doing? And often the race is what keeps you excited, motivated. There's a bit of fear there that kind of drives you. But I just love that. I think that's such a great way to phrase it. How do I keep this fun?
Yeah. This is a sign of a good coach too, right? Values the fun of it. Yeah. And I think there's actually a high risk of burnout during this stretch too, in a way. Like, I know some athletes I know, who've dialed up the intensity are chasing Strava segments. Like maybe not, that maybe they're just so pumped and they love competing like that. But I I have some concerns for burnout for some people who are maxing out during this time, and then are going to perhaps when the race season resumes, all of a sudden they're going to feel like they never had, I don't know if they're going to feel like they never had a break or so. Yeah, the excited is really important because I presume when races start again, all of a sudden there's going to be a long season for a lot of people. And yeah, excitement's important. And excitement is rare, actually. And that's something that I was a little surprised about when I started my work is more athletes seem to struggle, even the best, even, or I'll say the best, even very good ones, not necessarily the best. Very good ones struggle with, feeling really nervous or a lot of pressure or high expectations, or races carry a lot, like some dread even. Whereas the best are excited, and it's almost rare to be excited. So but excitement is such a commonality of the best athletes and the best performances. So if we can have an athlete fairly fit, maybe not the fittest they've ever been, but excited at the start of a start line, or at the start of whatever a season is going to look like, I feel like I have so much hope for that person having a lengthy and fulfilling season. So yeah, excitement's important. Whatever we can do to grow it, that's a positive.
I feel like from my own racing, that idea wasn't a given with me, meaning like I did my best when my brain and my energy was excited to race.
Yep.
But sometimes it wasn't always like that. Sometimes I was nervous or afraid that the outcome might not be what I hope it's going to be. And
Yeah.
Not to say I would do better in either mindset, but certainly the excited one made the process way more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I always, so without deliberately trying to do that, it was something I realized early, was just that if I could approach competitions excited at the possibility of a great outcome rather than fearing the possibility of a poor outcome. They're the same thing, but they're two different ways of looking at it. And so yeah, so building that mindset during this time just seems like such a valuable skill almost to develop, because I do think it's a bit of a skill. It's not a given that you just feel that way. I think even the best athletes have a certain level of anxiety and like tension around competitions because it means so much.
Yep.
And I also think though, if you're in a position where you think you can maybe win this thing or do a personal best or whatever it is for you, there is an excitement because there's that possibility. I don't know what
Yeah.
to say. Sorry, I'm just getting excited.
No. I think what you're saying is super. It's just like, it's kind of affirming what I was saying, which I always appreciate that. Which is just basically saying, like, you've been an elite athlete, and you've been excited for some races, and you've been kind of, maybe the pressure has felt too high or a little too fearful about the outcome in some races, and you're just like reflecting on the fact that you tend to perform better when you're excited.
Mm-hmm.
And we're recognizing the fact that maybe to be the best in some fields, there needs to be at least some intensity about winning or an outcome. And I'd say that varies person to person regarding to what degree that intensity helps them or hurts them. I think everyone's really different regarding that. But yeah, I think it's just finding your balance, finding your balance between kind of recognizing where sport lies in the greater scheme of things, and so therefore being able to just be excited and treat it a little bit like a game, and then also having it matter enough to you that it maybe drags that extra ounce out of you at the end, or it matters enough to you that you plan extremely well, like the little extra that the mattering brings out of someone. It's a worthy thing to figure that balance out.
Yeah, I also find too that like excitement energy to me is playful energy, and playful energy usually leads to being a little more relaxed and in a state of flow.
Yeah,
that's what I always found. Like excitement was a positive way to come at it, and almost playful. And when I was like that, I usually got more out of it. Like I just performed better. So
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And it's funny, like what you said there at the beginning was so correct about like it's more like a state of flow. And it's funny how aligned with science that is actually, in that um, when we're excited, basically we're not sensing that we have much to lose. When you're excited, you're looking forward to the challenge. The key thing is all your attention is on the task. And when all your attention is on the task, that's like, yeah, like basically your whole self then is devoted moment by moment to being the best you can be, which typically leads to the best performance, and is like, that is what flow state is, like that notion of being in the zone. Some people might be more familiar with the term being in the zone, but flow state is the correct term. When we're concerned about outcome, we have the presence of threat. We're aware we could lose something that seems to matter to us. We are aware there could be a consequence to this that causes us pain or embarrassment or disappointment. And when we're aware of threat, we always have a little bit of our attention aware of threat, a little bit of our attention focused on that, a little bit of our attention looking for things that could demonstrate that threat is a real thing. So essentially we lose some of our attentional energy and our attentional powers in that distraction. So that's typically why like being excited serves our performance, because we feel safe enough essentially when we're excited to put all our attention into the moment. Whereas when we're worried about outcome, worried about losing, worried about a bad time, worried about a bad score, kind of always have part of our attention directed on that possibility, which just diminishes the amount of ourselves available to invest in being our best in any given moment. So that could even take me to one very classic sports psychology method or strategy, which is when you feel nervous, is to try to interpret those nerves as excitement as opposed to fear. The more you can flip those nerves to being excitement versus fear, the more likely you are to be able to focus all your attention on the task. So yeah, there's something to play with, if you get a big workout from your coach sometime in this block and you think, oh man, I don't know if I can hit all those splits. Ooh, I feel a little nervous. Practice flipping those nerves from fear to excitement. That'll be something you can use in a race for sure.
I love that. That's cool.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna jump. Oh, and one other thing I wanna say is I think when you have a whole bunch of athletes genuinely wanting different things, like some people just want to train easy for a while, other people want to be more intense. One thing that I avoid, and I think a lot of the best coaches seem to avoid as well, is just ever questioning their motivation or desire. Like most of the I would say all the athletes I work with, because like I work with some elite athletes, but I work with athletes of other levels too. And I always say that any athlete who is asking for my help is a motivated athlete. Any athlete who is asking for a coach's help is a motivated athlete. And I think sometimes during the stretch of time, athletes, if they don't want to be as intense as their teammate, they start fearing, do I not want it badly enough? Do I not care enough? Am I not motivated enough? Am I lazy? And no, man, like if you're in this and if you're concerned about that, in all likelihood, you're not lazy. And I think this belief that, or concern that you're not trying hard enough or don't care enough can block a person from learning to listen to their body, which is really a key in being the best you can be. So no one's lazy. Let's just take that off the table. Lazy or unmotivated or not committed, or it's very rare. It's very rare. I deal with rarely with people who I would say are not committed. So trust yourself, trust your motivation and your commitment. If you need a break,
I think that's actually one thing that, just as to your first point, like learning to listen to your body more, because there's been an effective removal of any and all group training. People are doing that more. Like even the athletes I work with, they're not in a master's swim group, or they're not in the usual groups they are, which are also good because they pull you along and there's accountability. Like I'm not diminishing the benefits of those things.
Yeah.
But also they now are just, it's only them. And
Hmm.
so they are, I found that it's completely true. They're getting a little bit more in touch with how they actually feel in that moment day to day. And the decisions are a little bit different than if they are like, oh, I got to meet my run group at 4, but I'm completely smashed. And
Exactly.
It's interesting. It's a good thing. Good thing.
I think it's such a good thing. Or like when they do meet that run group at 4, I have to keep up with my friend who runs the same PR as me in these intervals or in this easy run, for goodness sakes, right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very. I think yeah, trusting ourselves is hard when you are a motivated person who cares about sport and really wants to see progress. Like listening to that need to back off is a challenge and a worthy thing to learn to trust, I think. Jasper, probably as a coach, you see that so much. Like you coach a bunch of athletes, you can see how valuable it is for an athlete to respect their need to rest or
Yes,
adjust.
for sure. And it's often the hardest thing for them to do because of what you said just a little bit earlier, which is the fear of whether I actually want this enough.
Yeah,
Because
totally.
you know, we're sort of hardwired to be like more and more harder, like keep up, like it's pretty ruthless. And it's sometimes I've said this to athletes if they're debating whether they're tired, they need a day off, do they maybe need a couple days, like they're just at the end of their rope. And I've said this on numerous occasions. I've said sometimes it takes more courage to take a day off than it does to power through, but we kind of have that flipped in our brain because we always associate courage with like more and pursue and like stick it out and be tougher. But I'm like, no, actually sometimes it's going to take more bravery for you to just dial back for a couple days. And
Definitely.
sometimes when you frame it like that, it makes them feel better because they're like, oh, I'm being courageous, so I'm going to sit on the couch.
Definitely.
No.
And having someone they respect and their coach tell them that, like that's just, I mean, sometimes it's necessary to hear it from you, right? Like someone's not going to do it unless they
Oh,
hear it from
totally.
you.
It's way easier to hear it from someone else, including me. Like I've spent a
Yeah,
lifetime doing
yeah.
this, but if I'm actually going to go down if I was to go down this road again and compete and race, I would get a coach, and mostly because I would want them to tell me they're outside of my box and I'm inside
Yeah.
my own world and I can rationalize everything and all that stuff. But I still, like, for my own self, don't always make wise choices.
No,
It's
same with me. Same with me. I could recall last year I had some like energy related problems and I needed to take a long stretch of time off and I started to build back. And one of the college athletes I work with, I was like, oh yeah, I think I'm gonna run 20 to 30 minutes a day. And he was like, I don't think you should set a goal. He's like, I think you should take it one day at a time. This is good. Like, you know, it's funny. Like, and I was like, oh, you're right. Like, I remember appreciating like him say that. He was right. You know, don't
Yeah.
set a goal. You'll make yourself hit it.
Yeah.
Like, thanks, 19-year-old. You're so right.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. All right. Well, one thing I'll jump into next is just some of the education and experimentation that I've seen since this whole stretch. Two things are interesting. One is I've watched one running team I work with completely change up how they do summer training. Like a bunch of their season stopped early because of obviously COVID, and their coach, I can see their coach using this as an absolute like test tube subject in a way, you know, like he immediately put them on their summer block in May, and they've just switched over to like a super low mileage, high intensity block, what they never would have had ever in the lead up to will be cross country season, you know. And I'm so fascinated. I'm in admiration of the courage to try something completely different. And I'm so curious how this is going to work out. And I can't tell you how it's going to work out, but it's something I'm seeing from a really brilliant person with a very elite group of runners. And I just love that they're brave enough to try something new, take a risk, use this time in a different way. So we'll see. And I think it's fun for them. Like, the number of people who've said to me, Shannon, our training is so weird. We're on a 10-day block, and we got all these doubles, but they're short, and all this fast stuff. And I was like, wow, okay, that's fun, actually. And they're excited and they're interested. So that's one thing I'm seeing. And then for myself, like in my own work, one standard thing I do with many teams I work with is I do these weekly focus sessions, which is where we do, I present basically a one mindfulness or visualization strategy a week. And they typically build off of each other. Like I have a short curriculum that's like 8 or 9 different meditations and visualizations. They're very performance based, and I cycle through them. And they were designed for a competitive season. They're designed to be given to a team that's racing every couple weeks. And so they cycle, and they're all very performance based. But then with COVID, the team wanted to continue. And I was thinking, man, what am I going to do with you for like this indefinite stretch of time? It almost seemed ridiculous to cycle through the same performance meditations and visualizations over and over. So what we did was we really dove into meditation itself. So I took a departure from the very specific performance ones, and we worked through like a 4-week unit on how to notice negative thoughts that are untrue, and how to cut through those and return like your attention on trusting the best of yourself. So we did a 4-week unit on that in one form, and then we did another 6-week unit on that using a different form. So the first form was using the work of a woman called Tara Brach, and her meditations are fascinating. Like they're really good at helping you understand yourself. She has this, and I'm telling you this because you can Google it, and it's easy to find. So she has a strategy called RAIN, and the acronym is RAIN. And it's just a great way of, if you're not feeling emotionally the way you want to feel, you can sit down with yourself and you can understand it. And usually in the process of understanding it, you feel better. And then the more you start to understand how you feel, the more you can catch that kind of in day-to-day life without even necessarily needing to sit down and meditate in the future. So it's just a terrific practice to develop self-understanding, and to notice thought patterns that aren't helpful, and then eventually easily move through those thought patterns. Then the next work that we dove into was the work of a fellow called Jeffrey Schwartz, who's a neuroscientist who basically does the same thing just from a different angle. So that he wrote a book called You Are Not Your Brain. And that book is awesome. It's not about sports. It's about being a person. And it's about any time that you encounter intense emotions that maybe seem too much for the scenario, it helps you work through what those are about. So related to Tara Brach stuff. So both of these units that we did were focused on helping you notice self-limiting beliefs that aren't true, and letting them go and accessing the person you want to be. And both of these strategies are really good for that. And so we spent 10 weeks with me presenting one element of those strategies, and then doing meditations around them. And then following that, I got a request from some of these athletes that I watched The Last Dance on ESPN with Michael Jordan. I'm not sure how many people have been watching that series, but yeah, it's just crazy. Like, it's just gone viral, right? Like, if I didn't watch that series in my field, I'd be like due diligence, I think, to to watch the series. And I'm so glad about the recommendation. So the request from my athlete was, will you watch The Last Dance? Can we talk about Michael Jordan's perspective on sport? And can we do what Phil Jackson did with the Bulls? And my first thought was, well, I was like, I can watch The Last Dance, and I can, like, definitely we could talk about that. I don't think I can find what what Phil Jackson did with the Bulls. But lo and behold, you can. Phil Jackson has an autobiography called Sacred Hoops.
Cool.
And so he's actually quite specific in that biography. And basically what the Bulls did was Zen. So now this team is doing at least a 6-week unit on Zen, because now I've had that content presented to me. And Zen is fascinating because Zen cuts to a level even deeper, I would say, than the 2 previous units we did. It's basically, I think, the origin and the purest form of meditation. And we're all benefiting from the perspective it's giving us. We're getting such a deeper education in meditation and in human focus and attention than we ever would have had COVID not stopped my performance cycle, that's just like, so I really feel like we're leveraging this time well. So yeah, Tara Brach's work, Jeffrey Schwartz, You Are Not Your Brain, now Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind is what I'm reading. And
I don't know if you can, you're on your phone, so I don't know if it'll work, but maybe what I'll do is just, if you could email me those recommendations after, that would be great. And then I'll just make sure everybody in this group gets it, or we'll put it on Instagram. We can just say, hey, here's those book recommendations. I just wanted to actually jump in, if that's okay, because I thought I really loved the idea of experimentation through this phase. And one thing I just wanted to share with Tendo. So Tendo's a figure skater, and it's been a particularly challenging time for those young athletes because there's been no ice. And before everybody jumped on, I was talking to Tendo, and usually figure skating, once you get to a certain level, I mean, you take very little time off. They maybe get a couple weeks here and there. So for them to have 3 months off has been quite extraordinary. And especially when you're that age, you come back, your body's probably very different too. She'll be growing, she'll be getting stronger. But when you talk about experimentation, this is one thing I love. I think it's applicable to everybody here, whether you're doing triathlon, mountain biking, swimming, or figure skating in particular. As a parent of a figure skater, there's a real rhythm to their year, and they'll work on new skills. But when they get within a certain window of a competition, it's all about the competition. And they do program run-throughs 100 times, and they basically just practice the elements that they're going to do in the competition. And it's cool. It's necessary because you have to be really ready to perform your program and your element, like your required elements in the level you're in. But what I've noticed that is you miss, and Tendo can maybe attest to this, what you miss in that window leading into the competition is any new skill development. So like Tendo, for example, she's doing double axles and like quite high level stuff. She's starting to work on some of her triples. She's frozen now. I don't know if she can hear me, which is sort of a shame, but I think she keeps getting booted off here. She might come back.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, well, I know, exactly. Anyway, it's still relevant. What I've noticed is when they get within that window of competition, they stop working on the next set of skills. And so if she's trying to do all her triple jumps now, there she is. Hey, Tendo, can you hear me? Thumbs up. What I was saying is when you're moving into a competition, you're within a certain window of that competition, you're very specific on the skills you need for the competition, and you kind of stop working on the next level of skills, which for Tendo are triples basically. So, and then after the competition, they have another little window of time where they can start that skill progression again. And so if I was going to say anything to Tendo in this moment where competitions, we don't know if there's going to be summer competition or fall competition, I'm like, this is a massive opportunity for these skaters to come back from all of this, having developed a whole new set of skills that would have maybe taken way longer because it's being interrupted by competitions where they have to just default to what they can actually do. Do you know what I mean? So I just love that. I think it's such a great opportunity. likewise, if you're a mountain biker, Adam's here, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of skills that you can develop that, you know, are going to benefit you further down the road that maybe get interrupted because now we're really focused on just this race. So anyway,
Yes.
that excites me more than anything. If I was an athlete, I would just be so excited about that prospect. I think that'd be cool.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree with you. I had a runner tell me last night, he's like, I just love this. It's just training block after training block. Like I don't think I've ever got, had an opportunity to get so fit because usually it's broken up with racing. So yeah, I agree with you, Jasper. I'm hearing that as well.
Cool. Sorry to go on a rant there.
No, that was a perfect rant. And actually, it was probably a good time to stop me too, because I'm wondering if people have any questions or anybody, if anybody wants to send this conversation in a different direction, please feel free if you have a question or a comment to use this time for that.
I think Andrew might be jumping in here.
Hey, Jazz, how are you doing?
Hey, good. How are you, buddy?
Well, pretty good. I guess my question has to do with this. What I've learned over my years, there seems to be this psychology in a person that in order to succeed or excel, you first have to fail. So you do a race and you just come out of it and going, well, that was like an epic failure. I'll never, ever do that again. And yet you have all these things in your head going, well, I can do better next time. I just need a chance next time. And then you find that you excel, and you see it with like team sports, hockey teams. They get into the playoffs and they have the chance to win, but they fail. But then they come back and they win. And I think there's lots of individual athletes that do this. So I guess I'm trying to. If I was younger, I would like to have a discussion about that as to how you don't self-sabotage or how you can excel without, or maybe mitigating that fail.
Oh, how can we succeed without failing? Yeah.
Andy's wondering when the failing's going to stop. He's like, when do I start succeeding?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding, Andy.
No.
Oh man, that's interesting. I hear you. What you're saying is that it's like, wow, like, so I hear I think what you're saying is just like, why do we even need to wait for that failure to happen to like kick us in the butt enough or refine us enough or teach us what we need to know to then go on and be successful, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. Oh man, that's such isn't that what we all want to know too? Like how do we do this? What it reminds me. I'll share one story with you, and I'll share another story with you. I think I've got two stories. Second of which is scientific, the first of which is not. So, oh man, failure. Well, something about sports. Anytime you're performing in sport, is you're at the edge of you're usually operating at the edge of your capabilities, right? And I feel like bringing that best performance out of yourself is about becoming a real expert about exactly how to ride that line. And a lot of the best athletes do. They know how to go kind of right to their edge, but not tip over, both in the training and then also on the day of. But man, if you're really riding that line, sometimes you're just going to tip over, or there's going to be some little error. And failure is how we learn. So, man, I don't think if we're in this for a long time and we're really operating at the edges that we can avoid the odd failure. I think we even want them. I think we even want them. But and it's funny, like the story that is bringing to mind is Northern Arizona University. Their men's cross country team is perhaps the best in the country. You might call it the best in the country. It's funny, when I'm Canadian, by the way. I'm from Vancouver, and until I moved to the States, I had no idea about college sports. So I don't expect you all to know about college sports. It's like crazy down here. But they're very. Oh, do I have someone?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. But they're like Division I college sport down here is really, really good. Like the guys on NAU, probably 10 of them can run under 30 minutes for 10K, like between 19 and 22. So I mean, elite athletes. And so they won the national championship 3 years in a row, which is a really, really big deal here. And their coach is like perhaps best coach in the country. The team did everything right. Like so they were going for a 4-peat this fall, and it was picture perfect. Like the guys were like 19 guys, like 19 like brothers. They did the training. I mean, training goes up and down, but it was pretty darn solid. The weather was perfect. Like everything was perfect. They dominated during the season, just dominated, and we're supposed to go 4-peat. And I want to say from the outset, no box went unchecked. Like that, it was beautiful preparation. And attention to everything. Anyway, they got to the race. The race poured. They hadn't really had exposure to that, and they lost. They were second, and it was the biggest shock. It was like the shock of the cross, like, that they lost. And it's so interesting to look back, and there definitely, everybody was saying, what could we have done? What did we do wrong? What could we have learned? And there's definitely things that have been, suggested, and it could be right. But man, when I look at the preparation and I look at the attention, to me, they reached human capacity with how it is possible to prepare for such a thing. And sometimes, like, life just doles you a loss. And I think they all think they needed to be humbled, and I actually could agree. And it just deals you a loss. So I think the lesson there is, if you're gonna ride the line, you're just bound to have one once in a while, and hopefully we can all look on those days and see how they grow us. But there is there's some really interesting research on how we do rebound from those disappointments. Basically the number one key factor to how we rebound from those losses is basically what we tell ourselves about those losses. And there's a really good book. It's called Learned Optimism, and it's an older book. It's from research done in the 1980s, or no, gosh, even like up until the 1980s. So older research, but basically what we want to develop, if we want to be someone who's going to rebound from those disappointments, is something called an optimistic explanatory style. And that basically is, the optimistic explanatory style is able to notice the qualities in ourselves that are likely to contribute to further successes, further victories, further growth, and to look at the events that perhaps caused the loss or the disappointment, to see them as temporary and useful. So basically the lesson from this is to, like, so say if I was to take that example of the NAU cross country team, and we're like, oh man, we were second at the national championship. So first of all, the qualities in ourselves that are still present, that could easily lead to future championships are like the bonds, the relationships, the work ethic, the expertise of the coach, the location of training here in Flagstaff. Like, these are enduring long-term strengths that we expect to draw from in the future, and in all likelihood should lead to further success. So that's generating hope. It's generating hope in the future, and it's also recognizing like our competency and belief in ourselves. And then the way we look on the loss is, we're like, hey man, maybe we took that day too lightly. Maybe we treated it too lightly. In the future, maybe we need to not be quite so goofy in our warm-up. That kind of a thing, and we're going to remember that. We're going to use that in the future. So we make like one of the causes temporary and fixable and a lesson, or maybe maybe we need to find a way to practice running in poor conditions. Like, if our weather is perfect all fall, maybe we need to make a point of creating some poor conditions in which to train, so that if we hit a day that's slippery and mud bogged, it was. We're just better at that. Again, you make the adversity that caused the loss temporary and something to add to your toolbox in the future. So I don't know if that really answered your question, Andrew.
Well, it's just really interesting to just talk about that whole experience of fail, success, and you were talking before about finding that Zen feeling or peaceful or excitement, and then you had some, what do you call those things? The rain thing.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the name for them, but my experience was I viewed my performance in the Ironman in '84 as just awful, and got a chance to go back in '88, and it was with a different mindset. And my little thing was dare, and I taped it on the handlebars, and it was just a reminder the whole race: drink, attitude, relax, eat, and if I did all that, I would be strong throughout the race. And I went into that race with a mindset that I could deal with any event that happened, and I was really, really peaceful about it, and I had a great race. So I'm in agreement with you that you need to have those fails to succeed. But lots of the stuff you talked about, I can relate to, and you do these things. I like to be younger again and try it all again.
I love that your dare. It's funny. So dare is an acronym. So when you hear the word dare, it makes you. I think it's a good word to feel inspired, right? Like dare to be your best. But I like how you broke the acronym down into like the most basic process-oriented steps, right? Drink, attitude. Was it drink, attitude, relax, and eat?
Eat, yeah.
You know what's funny is I did my master's thesis on a concept called DARE, literally an acronym. And it was related to, I had a theory that those who enjoy the moment of highest exertion are going to get the most out of the moment. So I called that DARE state. And the acronym broke down into deliberate, autonomous, reaching engagement.
Cool.
Nice.
And then I had football here at NAU stole it, and they changed it to destroying adversity with relentless effort.
I like that the first word's destroy.
They footballized it. They footballized there. That's so. Oh my gosh!
I think you both need to write a book called Dare that are
there we go.
Different. I just wanted to really highlight one thing that I picked up from what you just said about the failure thing, but also how you interpret it. And what I really loved, and this was a trap that I used to fall into, was sometimes failure, I pegged that on my character, which is more of a long-term thing. So if I equated failure to my worth as a person, that was like a pretty long-term, deep, destructive way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you said if you equate the failure to a short-term fixable thing, like not goofing off in your warm-up, I think and this is just like such a way better way to approach the setback, because it doesn't I probably would have avoided a lot of kind of depressed weeks after bad races if I just boiled it down to a couple of, short-term fixables rather than I'm a terrible person.
Totally. So but what's probably interesting too, Jasper, and you tell me, but a lot of times when athletes take it that hard, they almost think they need to take it that hard to communicate that sport matters enough.
Yeah, totally.
It's like,
yeah. That was my immature way of communicating to the people around me. I needed them to know how much like this meant to me.
Yeah.
But it was a very immature way to go about it. It was so self-destructive. I
Yeah.
mean, I worked my way out of it through my teen years, but as a teenager, I was a disaster. I just and now that I look back, of course, when you have perspective after however many decades since then, I sort of cringe. It's embarrassing to see how I reacted to things that didn't go well. But also, I think there's very few teenagers who have the capacity to, handle those situations well.
Yes.
You're sort of also working through hormonal changes and life, you're becoming a different person almost. So I'm a little more gentle on myself than I used to be, but it's cringeworthy. And I'm not the only one. I mean, I see it in other people when they have setbacks. I'm just like, wow, that's not a real productive response.
We could do better. We could do better than that.
Yeah. But I like, again, what you said was if you can boil it down to short-term fixable things rather than lumping it in with character and all these big, heavy things that you carry around. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Where were you 30 years ago, Shannon?
Oh,
God.
I was where you were.
True. That's true. That's
Beating
true.
myself up over,
Yeah.
It's funny so in that book, Learned Optimism, this is basically where a lot of resilience research came from, is this particular psychologist whose name is Martin Seligman. And he did this experiment, I want to say, gosh, in the 1980s, 1984 maybe it was. And so he went to Berkeley, and Berkeley is really famous for its swimmers. And he carried out an experiment with the Berkeley swim team where they had the swimmers do a workout, but the coaches were instructed to lie to the athletes and tell them they'd swum their intervals slower than they actually had. And prior to the workout, the athletes had taken a measure to assess their level of optimism. And optimism is basically defined by the degree by which you believe your good qualities are permanent and pervasive. So what I mean by that is that they are going to last, they're going to serve you, and they spread throughout your life. And the degree to which you believe the negative events in your life are temporary and local. So what I mean by that is it's just like, this is a short-term error that I can fix. The bad stuff is a short-term error that I can fix. And there's a lot of, we can go far deep. It's not that simplistic, but that's the gist. So these swimmers, they tested them, and then they had them do a workout, and then they lied to them about how fast they'd swum. And the athletes that had tested as the most optimistic went and swam faster their next intervals after being lied to. Whereas the athletes that had been determined to be more pessimistic gave up and had a terrible workout.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And so the point is not so much like if you're optimistic that you have some magic fairy dust and it makes you a better athlete. The point is that the choice you make immediately after a defeat is a different choice. Those actions tend to end up in a more successful outcome. So like Jasper, what got in our way as young athletes, was that if we get really down on ourselves for a while, we might not look after ourselves that well. We might not be as focused in training for a bit. We might lose a week, of recovery and good training because we're upset. Whereas the athlete that is less hard on themselves, more objective, can see the setback as something to learn from, is like immediately on top of it and working in a productive way, the next day. So that they get a week on us, and that happens who knows how many times in a career, right? Like what kind of discrepancy that ends up in performance in the long run. So yeah, but that's an interesting study for sure.
That's cool. That's a cool study. I'm going to start lying to everybody I coach.
I know. Yeah.
Just to test their level of optimism.
Yeah, not only were you slower than you thought you were, well, now you need to go take an optimism test, and you're probably a pessimist. And
what do you mean? Start lying, Jasper.
That's right. That's funny.
Anybody else with any questions or comments?
No.
I'm not. Jasper's moderating. I'm used to
Yeah.
moderating. So I'm
No,
like
this is,
swiping
hey, this is great.
around.
And you know what? We're at an hour, and I think we've you know, the interest of people are, I see people dressed to go riding, maybe. No. Anyway, this has been so great. Every time I chat with you, whether it's in a platform like this or just on the phone, I feel like I come away energized, excited, and definitely sort of relearn some stuff or learn some new stuff. So you're awesome. Thank you so much. That was just so great. Tendo, I know jumping into a Zoom room full of adults, you know, maybe a little dull, but I hope you had some takeaways, and you know, I hope that was good for you too. Awesome.
She's way better at Zoom than us, man. I don't know how to do that on Zoom. Thanks, Tendo.
But thanks everybody for jumping in. We do put these up on the YouTube channel that we have going. So if you want to revisit it, go for it. If you know anybody who maybe would benefit from hearing Shannon's thoughts, definitely send them over. But Shannon, that was great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I always have fun with you and the B78 crew. So I appreciate getting to spend this time with you.
You bet.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Thanks for jumping in. Thanks for coming, Adam. Nice to see you. And Michelle, thanks. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Jasper. Good to see you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
See you. Bye.